Burglary, grand theft, DWI. These are among the crimes committed by past and current employees of Niagara Rehab. Some while they worked there, others before they were even hired. Court documents show former nursing aide Amanda Kissel was convicted of driving while ability impaired in 2003, a year before she was hired at Niagara Rehab. Then, in 2015, the state attorney general says she began forging checks tied to an account that belonged to an elderly woman in her care, racking up more than $3,500 in charges for pizza, cell phone use, and satellite TV. Kissel was fired, but in a brief telephone interview, she said the entire incident is a misunderstanding. Her case is now before a grand jury. Former Assistant Nursing Director Lynn Hasley and former nurse supervisor Susan Rucci began working at Niagara Rehab after a run-in with police in 2009. That's when investigators say they found the women cruising the streets of the Cataract City under the influence of drugs and alcohol. This whole time, the police report says Rucci's 3-year-old son was sleeping in the back seat. Less than 2 years later, Rucci was convicted of misdemeanor DWI in a separate incident. Neither woman still works for Niagara Rehab, but that's not the case for Christina Newman, a registered nurse who previously worked at the old St. Francis nursing home in Williamsville and Elderwood in Amherst. Niagara Rehab hired Newman last year as an RN supervisor, in charge of 145 patients, despite the fact that she's a 9-time felon. In 1999, when she was just 17 years old, Newman pleaded guilty to 3 felony counts of grand theft and burglary in the state of Florida, and 6 more felonies in Georgia. She was sentenced to more than a year in jail and 5 years probation, which court documents show she violated in 2003. Now, despite this extensive criminal history, New York State certified Newman as a registered nurse more than 6 years ago. And in fact, New York is one of only 6 states in the nation that does not require all of its nurses to undergo criminal background checks.
It's a loophole in the system. Other states have such legislation. That's not the case here in New York State. Nurses do not go through background checks in order to get a nursing license.
That means it's up to individual nursing homes, and there are more than 70 in Western New York, to decide whether to pay for background checks.
Nurses, and especially people working in nursing home facilities, are working with some of the most vulnerable of our population. We're talking about elderly people, people with dementia, people with memory issues, people who are most susceptible to economic crimes and to physical abuse.
While Niagara Rehab takes some steps to screen its staff before hiring, it does not perform criminal background checks on everyone applying for a job, and it also acknowledges it does not test them for drug use when they are hired. A spokesman did tell me that Niagara Rehab checks to make sure its job applicants have active medical licenses. It also runs their names through an online database of people barred from working at Medicare facilities. Now, Niagara Rehab declined an on-camera interview request, and once we started digging into some of these details, that spokesman from Niagara Rehab told us he was done answering our questions. Charlie Speck, 7 Eyewitness News.